about another hour drive. So something that's been on my mind, I wanted to talk about a little bit because I see a lot of Border Patrol checkpoint videos, and I've got a couple myself on this channel. I think one or two. I don't really go through the Border Patrol checkpoints much. But anyway, I had a client contact me and showed me the video. Wanted to sue because of some actions taken during a Border Patrol checkpoint. So I kind of want to help you understand, and this is for educational purposes. I'm not providing legal guidance. But I wanted to help you understand kind of what the courts have said and how to invoke your rights at a Border Patrol checkpoint and avoid getting arrested. Now, I will tell you, it doesn't matter how legal you are. It doesn't matter how right you are. If you get the right Border Patrol checkpoint or officer, or in this case, the wrong one, I guess you could say, if they want to put you in jail, they'll put you in jail for any reason or no reason. That's just the way it is. But I want to help you stay out of jail while protecting your rights and understanding what the case law is on the issue. Anyone that goes through a Border Patrol checkpoint, one of the cases that the agents there, the Border Patrol agents, always quote is the Rodriguez-Fuerte case. And they're right and they're wrong when they quote that case, because while they understand some aspects of it, they don't understand all aspects of that case. But there are others as well. You can't take the Rodriguez-Fuerte case by itself and assume that that's the be-all end-all of Border Patrol policy that the Supreme Court has ruled on. There are several cases, and a lot of them are used in conjunction. So let me tell you this: if you're one of those people that just doesn't answer questions, which is perfectly fine, I'm one of those people. Here's the way that you do it. All right, you go to the Border Patrol checkpoint. Of course, they're always going to ask you, are you a U.S. citizen? You're not required to answer that. Now, if you're in a crunch for time, how hard is it to say yes or no? It's not that hard at all. If you don't have time to deal with the BS, then, just answer a simple question of yes or no. You're not really giving anything up. You're just explaining yes or no. However, if you've got the time and you've got the inclination to enforce your rights, then the way you do it is very simple. Hey, look, I know you're just doing your job, but I don't want to answer any questions. The way I do it is, as soon as I roll down my window, I say, hey, good morning, I know you're just doing your job, but I'm just going to let you know on the outset I don't answer any questions. And then I try to hand them a constitution. Would you like a constitution? And then, of course, they ask the question, are you a U.S. citizen? And I generally say, as I said, respectfully, I'm not going to answer any questions. Now, I've had two types of reactions to that, which some of you probably have. And that is, well, sir, you have to answer my questions. Or they pull you over into secondary. So here's what the case law says. They are allowed to stop you. They're allowed to stop you and inquire as to your citizenship. Okay, there's nothing unconstitutional, according to the Supreme Court, of them stopping you and doing so. The Supreme Court's called it a de minimis violation of your rights, and it doesn't really, it's a brief encounter, and so they've said it falls under the Fourth Amendment. It's protected. Doesn't matter if you agree or not. That's what the case law says, is that they can briefly stop you and ask those questions. Now, if they suspect or have reason to believe that, or they need to do a further inspection based on some sort of reasonable articulable suspicion, then they are allowed to briefly send you into secondary for the purposes of determining whether or not you are a U.S. citizen. Now, that's got to be based on some sort of suspicion. And this is where I think the argument comes in. But again, I'm trying to keep you out of jail and keep you out of trouble. is they will say that by you not answering the question, it's probably because you're not a U.S. citizen and therefore they need to do more investigation, okay? That's fine. If that's what they're going to use as their reasonable suspicion, they can put you into secondary. Now, what they cannot do, and this, again, the same case law, the Rodriguez case, says that they cannot perform a search of your person or your vehicle without something more, without some articulable reason that they need to perform a search. And there's no reason for them, if all you're doing is not answering a question as to your citizenship, for them to pull you out of your vehicle, because even if they pull you out of your vehicle, they can't search your person. They're not allowed to do that. You're not suspected of a crime. They just have reason to believe that you may or may not be a U.S. citizen. And so what I tell them, of course, because I know the Fuentes case, is, they're like, well, we're going to have to put you into secondary. And I usually say, okay, that's fine. I've got all day, but just so you know, you don't have all day. You are only allowed to pull me over for the limited purpose of determining my citizenship. And I can tell you right now, you're not allowed to search my vehicle, because that's specifically said in the Fuentes case that you cannot do unless there's something else that you find that justifies a search of my vehicle. You can't search my person unless you find something else that justifies a search of my person. Now, you might ask, well, CJ, if they put you in the secondary, how are they supposed to determine your citizenship if they don't search you for ID? Well, aren't you in a vehicle? If you're in a vehicle, they can run your license plate. If they run your license plate, they'll see who owns it. If they see who owns it, they can find out if you're a citizen. Boom, investigation complete. Now, the other thing is that when you don't answer those questions, and they pull you into secondary, here's the other thing. Whatever you do, don't say I'm not going into secondary. Don't just sit there. Because now you're giving them articulable suspicion that you're committing a crime, because you're blocking a roadway, you're hindering traffic, all these other kinds of things. Okay, so by just sitting there and refusing and making them pull you out of the car at the initial standpoint because you refuse to pull over into their so-called secondary, you're now giving them reasonable suspicion of a criminal act, and now they've got a reason to pull you out of the car, and now they've got a reason to search you and get ID and all that kind of stuff. So don't do that. Don't do that. Just go into secondary if you have the time and sit there. If you don't have the time, just say yes or no if you want to get the encounter over with. Now, I've said no and still been able to go along on my way, but it just depends on who you're dealing with. Some people would say, especially conservatives, and this is kind of what really irritates the flip out of me. Oh my gosh, but, CJ, we've got this border problem. We've got a president who's just letting people come across the border. This is our first line of defense against these people. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. So if that's your excuse for surrendering the Fourth Amendment, we might as well surrender the Second Amendment too. I mean, because, these people pouring across the border might have guns, and if you've got a gun and we can't determine whether or not you're a U.S. citizen, we need to also take your guns away. We need to take your guns away. We need to take your Fourth Amendment away. You know what? As a matter of fact, we don't think you should be able to vote if you're not willing to tell us what citizenship you are. Conservatives, where does that stop? Where does your hatred of the Constitution end because you're worried about the border? Okay, just because bad people do bad things doesn't mean that good people have to suffer. And just because people are coming across the border doesn't mean I'm required to surrender my Fifth Amendment rights. Because, and here's the thing, the Fifth Amendment protects you against incriminating yourself and all that. And obviously you're not going to incriminate yourself by saying yes or no to a citizenship question. But the court has also said, the Supreme Court has also said that if you have a right to speak, which we do under the First Amendment, then you also have a right not to speak. The freedom of speech is the freedom to not use that speech. That, you know, I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right. Okay, I don't understand how I have a full signal yet. It just... How... I just saw that it was rebooting now because I'm heading down to San Antonio. It's not like I'm in a empty place. But anyway, so when you're going through these whole checkpoints and you don't want to answer a question, don't say that you don't want to answer it because you're invoking your Fifth Amendment rights, because in some weird way that sort of says that there's something incriminating you don't want to talk about. But you're invoking your First Amendment right not to speak. That's what it is. And because, again, the courts have said if you have a right to speak, the First Amendment not only protects your right to speak, but not to speak. And so that's what you're doing when you go through a Border Patrol checkpoint. You're invoking your First Amendment right not to speak, or at least not to answer questions. And then, so that's really the deal here. Now, I strongly encourage anyone that thinks they're ever going to go through a Border Patrol checkpoint. This is what I do. I've got it in my glove compartment. I'm not going to pull it out while I'm doing 85 miles an hour. I strongly encourage you to print out the case, the Rodriguez-Fuerte case, and read it and understand it. If you have to, you know, read what other people have written about it. But it's really important that you read it, and I would even highlight certain sections of the case, particularly where it says that they can pull you in to a secondary for the limited purpose of determining your citizenship, and that they cannot do a search without something more. Without something more. Those areas, and you've got to understand that and be able to articulate that. In my video that I have on this channel where I went through, I think it was the Falfurrias checkpoint, I, did what I normally do. I rolled my window down. I said, hey, good afternoon. I know you're just doing your job, but I don't answer any questions. By the way, would you like a copy of the Constitution? And I've got a copy of the Constitution. I try to hand to them. I haven't had anybody take me up on that yet. And then, of course, they ask their question. I say, again, I'm not going to answer any questions. Am I free to go? Then they go through their little spiel about how, you have to answer questions. And they almost always quote that case. But if they quote the case, then they should know that, yes, you do have to answer those questions, or you do have to ask those questions. But nothing in there says I have to answer you. And I don't. I don't have to answer you. I do not have to assist with your investigation. Now, if something in that investigation shows that it's possible that I'm not a U.S. citizen, I don't know what that would be, but let me give you some examples. For example, if you're going through a Border Patrol checkpoint and maybe you have a brand new car, so it's got paper tags on it, and those paper tags haven't been registered with the DMV yet, then there is reasonable suspicion that, you're possibly driving illegally. And at that point, they could. Now, they've got to be able to not pull up your plates or whatever. So then in that case, they would have reasonable suspicion because there's a potential crime. There's reasonable suspicion that a crime is being committed because they looked up your paper plates, they weren't registered, and therefore they can't confirm the ownership. And if they can't confirm the ownership, then they can't confirm whether or not you're a U.S. citizen. Next is if you've got an expired plate on you. Because again, you're not giving up ID, right? So if you've got an expired plate on your vehicle, now you've given them, again, reasonable suspicion, and in fact, potentially probable cause that a crime is being committed, and now they can identify you. and or demand identification because you're committing a traffic infraction. Now, generally, the feds don't enforce state laws. They can't enforce state laws, but there are federal laws about license plates and what the license plates are supposed to be and all that kind of stuff. There are federal laws about driver's licenses. What they've got to do. All right, so if you've got even if they realize the limits of their authority over you as it relates to a traffic issue, all they're going to do is call a sheriff. So, and I agree. I think I just saw somebody say, if you're illegal, get the fuck out. Absolutely. While I'm quite libertarian, I'm not so libertarian as to be an open borders libertarian. And I'm a little L, I'm not a party libertarian. Those people are psycho. I think I've covered everything, and I'm just going to summarize it all real quick here. When you go to a border patrol checkpoint, just know this is the law, and when I say law, this is the way that the courts have interpreted the Constitution. When you go through a border patrol checkpoint, and again, the leading case is the Rodriguez-Fuerte case, and if you read that, you'll see several other cases that the court references. I recommend you go and read those as well so that you understand what they're quoting and how they're quoting it. And then you also need to do a little research on the freedom of not speaking, right? The freedom to remain silent. Not under the Fifth Amendment, under the First Amendment. All right, so you pull up to a checkpoint. They are required to ask you questions about your citizenship. You are not required to answer any questions. If you want to get out of there quickly, just say yes or no. You're on your way. If you don't have any time crunches and you don't want to answer any questions, that's fine. But if they don't, if they realize that you're an American citizen and you're just playing, hard to get, you just whatever, you're invoking your rights and that's making their job hell, they might just let you go anyway because they realize, okay, I get it. You're, move along. Kind of like the stormtroopers. But if they tell you that, okay, well, we're going to have to ask you to move over into secondary, do it. Move into secondary. The same case that said that it was legal for them to stop you and to question you is the same case that said that they can put you into a secondary for the limited purpose of determining your citizenship. So don't just sit there in the middle of the road and give them, and refuse to go into secondary. Keep in mind, the authority for them to put you into secondary is not the authority of them to search you or your vehicle. It's just for them to continue their investigation. Or there's two reasons for secondary. That's one of them. Or it's because during that brief stop, they encountered some other reasonable suspicion that there is a crime occurring, like a dead body in your back seat, 40 pounds or 40 kilos of cocaine in your passenger seat, something like that. Now, keep in mind in Texas, although this hasn't been that I know of, I haven't seen it because this is a fairly new development, but in Texas, the smell of what they call weed no longer is justified probable cause. Why is that? Because hemp is defined as 0.3% THC or less. Marijuana is defined as defined as hemp having more than 0.3% THC. Okay? An officer, whether you're smoking it or you just have it, an officer cannot use that as probable cause because you can't smell THC. You can smell, obviously, the burning of hemp or marijuana, but you can't smell whether or not what's being burnt, because they both smell the same, hemp and marijuana, has 0.3% THC or not. Now, that said, let me also say this. Again, it hasn't gone through the courts yet, so you're probably going to get arrested, or they're going to use it as, oh, I smell weed. Obviously object, invoke your rights, Don't volunteer for anything. Don't make it to where they have to beat the crap out of you. And then you fight it in court, and your attorney's going to have to take it. There's probably going to have to be an appeal because, you know, that's something that hasn't necessarily been litigated in Texas. It has been litigated in other states, and where marijuana is legal or where hemp is legal, as long as it doesn't have a certain percentage of THC, it's been found that it is no longer probable cause to say, oh, I smell weed. All right. So just so you know, there's that. Can they make you exit your vehicle? Yes. In Pennsylvania v. Mims, the Supreme Court said that an officer can make you exit your vehicle, and shoot, I'm forgetting there's another case. I want to say Johnson, but I might be wrong. But there's another case that also says that they can make your passengers get out of the vehicle. Now, you're not required to identify yourself unless, of course, you're the driver. But they can make passengers get out of the vehicle, and they can make you get out of the vehicle. So just know that. But they cannot search you or conduct a Terry frisk unless they also suspect you. First, there's two elements to a Terry frisk. First, there be reasonable suspicion or probable cause that you're committing a crime, and second, that there is a reason to believe that you are armed and dangerous. Okay, they can't just say, well, I'm going to perform a Terry frisk on you because I'm talking to you, or I'm going to perform a Terry frisk on you because I pulled you out of the vehicle. They can't do that. They cannot do that unless they also suspect you for some reason of being armed and dangerous. Now, what can that mean? If you've got an NRA sticker or an Open Carry Texas sticker or a GOA sticker or a Texas gun rights sticker, you know, or something that says, you know, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, you know, that would give them reasonable suspicion to believe that you're armed. Believe it or not, I don't have those stickers on my car, and I'm the gun guy. So, where was I? I think that's it. Oh yeah, I was just talking about secondary. So, those are the two reasons. You know, you give them some reason to believe that when you go to secondary, it's to further their investigation. It's whether or not you are a U.S. citizen, or it is because they have some reasonable suspicion of another crime that was raised at the moment you were initially stopped. Sometimes these Border Patrol checkpoints, they have a dog that sniffs every car while you're sitting there. That's perfectly legal as well. They can't make you sit there and wait for a dog, but if there's a dog that's already on hand and it's sniffing, and then let's say it, you know, oh, my dog hit. Of course, that's the go-to, because cops love to lie, and of course, you know, dogs, being the highly superior and intelligent species, are able to perfectly articulate, hey, excuse me, sir, what I smell here is 3 kilos of crack cocaine, couple of pints. Anyway, once you get to secondary, just sit there. Just sit there, tell them, hey, you guys do your investigation, do all you want. They can pull you out of the car. Okay, remember, what I would recommend is if they pull you out of the car, you lock it. Just lock it so they can't get into it. They can't search you. They can't search your vehicle unless they have some other reason to do that. And the same case that allows them to put you into secondary specifies that. Just because you're going into secondary, they have to have some other reason to be able to search you. All right. So that's pretty much it. I wanted to, let's see, is there any way I can speak to you on the phone? So the only way, look, I'm incredibly busy. I do consultations. I used to do them more, but because I'm always either in court and I'm done with my little tutorial here, my educational tutorial. And again, if you have further questions or you want specific questions about your specific incident, or you want actual legal advice on what to do, then talk to your attorney. Okay, this was just an educational video. I am not giving any of you legal advice. I'm not telling you what to do, what not to do. I'm telling you how I do it. and how I've done it since even before I was an attorney. So if it wasn't giving legal advice then, it's not giving legal advice now. But contact your attorney. But anyway, I do $50 consultations. Most attorneys will charge like $200 an hour. And the only reason I do 50 is because it is taking me away from my paid clients for me to do consultations. So the free way to get a hold of me is through my website, isuebadcops.com. Fill out the contact form and let me know what you need an attorney for. Tell me your situation. And because for me, being able to read something, like if I'm sitting in court and I'm just waiting, that's when I go through my messages and I'm able to read stuff. But for me to take a phone call, it takes me away from everything else. For me to have an in-person meeting, it takes away from everything else. Whereas filling out my web form, I look through that stuff when I have free time. And that's usually in the evenings most of the time, or it's when I'm sitting in court waiting for my case to be called. So those are that's why I do it that way. So just go to my website, isuebadcops.com or cjgrisham.com. I'm only licensed in Texas. I am licensed in federal courts. I can do what's called pro hoc vice in other states. As a matter of fact, I was one of the attorneys representing a party in New Mexico where I was sponsored by a New Mexico attorney and filed a lawsuit against Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, no relation. Filed a lawsuit against her in New Mexico court because I can do federal law. And then there was a case in Missouri I was going to take, but we ended up not hiring me while I was waiting for my sponsoring attorney to supervise me in that state. Not supervise me, sponsor me in that state. He pulled out, but I will tell you, in other states, it's very expensive. It's not worth having me represent you on a federal case in a foreign state because it's going to be expensive. I'm going to have to travel. There's going to be hotel expenses, all that kind of stuff. So while I'm only licensed in Texas and the federal courts, if you're outside of Texas, it's just incredibly expensive to hire me. And it's not because I'm expensive, it's just because of the time it takes. Yes, I am still an SDF attorney. I'm the lead Texas attorney for Self-Defense Fund. If we don't have an attorney in the state where you're a member of Self-Defense Fund, I'm the guy that goes and finds you an attorney if you don't have one, or I contact the attorney that you have to ensure that it's something that that you're going to have good representation on a gun case or a self-defense case. So I can't keep reading these. The only reason I was earlier is but anyway, that's it. That's all I had to say. I just want to let you guys know, be safe, be free, take care, and thank you for watching. I hope this was a little bit educational for you and that you learned a little bit something about Border Patrol checkpoints. But it's just important to be educated. Read the case law. They're always going to quote that Rodriguez-Fuerte case. So if you don't know the case, then they're able to lie to you about what the case says. I can't tell you how many Border Patrol checkpoint videos I watch, and not only are the individuals going through the checkpoint wrong in how they're arguing their case, but the Border Patrol agents are wrong in quoting the case law because they don't even know. They have these little cheat cards. Oh, this says this. Well, have you actually read the Rodriguez-Fuerte case? So it's very important. I keep a copy in my dashboard, and I've got certain passages highlighted that relate to the secondary search and the fact that you can't search me or my property without probable cause. But again, just the biggest thing is if you're asked to go into secondary because you're not answering questions, move into secondary, because if you don't, you're giving them reasonable suspicion that a crime is being committed. Okay, and that is blocking a roadway, obstructing traffic, whatever. All right, you guys take care, be safe, be free, always stay armed, vigilant, and ever aware of your surroundings. Bye.